Hello there, people of the internet. How is everybody doing today? I am doing magnificent. Appreciate you asking. So, today, what we're going to have a look at is I'm going to go through a bunch of things that I have here, and I'm going to try and come up with 5 guns that would be ideal for animal defense. Now, animal defense might look different depending on where it is that you live, but the general consensus is that you have, say, a medium or large game animal coming at you with the intent of doing you harm, and you have to have some sort of piece of equipment in order to stop that threat and put that threat down. Now, that being said, I'm going to go ahead and just get this one out of the way. This is not something that I would pick. Let me move that one aside. I gotta clean up my recording room here because it's definitely getting a little piled. So whenever people think of a defensive firearm, they normally think of something like this, an AR that has all sorts of tactical stuff on it and whatnot, and this right here does make a very good defensive rifle, but typically against, we're gonna just call it our own species. If I had something like a grizzly bear charging at me, even with, say, 77 grain or 85 grain or really nice 223 ammunition sending through this rifle, I still would not feel all that comfortable stopping that threat with a gun like this, especially if we're talking about a hunting situation where a lot of different places here inside the United States limit you to 5 rounds of ammunition inside of your magazine. I just would not trust something like this to be able to get that job done. Personally, especially if we consider that the threat is an animal, and animals oftentimes have to get up close and personal in order to do any kind of bodily harm, you should pretty much expect them to be right on top of you. Having as much firepower going out of your firearm as possible is definitely one of the more ideal ways to go. Myself, this is my number one. These are in no particular order, but I'd probably call this one of the less desirable options. 7.62 by 39, very powerful, very potent 30 caliber cartridge. It is still an intermediate round, so you do have to keep that in mind. However, that being said, as something is coming at you, whenever you have to, say, discourage the thing from proceeding forward, 5 rounds of 7.62 by 39, with it being a 123 grain bullet, would be significantly more effective than basically anything that comes out of an AR. So this would be my number one, just because I think that would be one of your better options if we are talking about animal defense. If something is right on top of you, semi-automatic, send a lot of hate downrange really quickly. If that thing is particularly far away, the 7.62 by 39 is pretty gosh darn effective out to about 300 yards. So you have a lot of space and a lot of leeway to be able to stop that threat if you see something coming at you at some pretty significant distances. However, that being said, you can always go for more power. Basically, any kind of your battle rifle style of rifle would be a pretty significantly good choice. In this particular case, I got a Setme C308. This is like a G3 style pattern of rifle. And if you want to have as much of an advantage as possible, this right here might be one of the more significant, or one of the significantly better options in terms of what you might pick for defense against whatever it is that might be coming at you in terms of an animal. I know here in Florida the deer don't get very big, but there are some pretty large hogs around here. I've seen them get all the way up to 600 pounds here in the state of Florida. I do not know how large they get in other places in the United States, however, they get quite sizable here. So, let's say 150 grain, 180 grain, soft points, 308, I feel like that's a lot of hate going down range at a pretty rapid succession. And with all that hate going down range, typically, yeah, you would have your 5-shot magazine, but point blank range, 308, semi-automatic self-loading rifle. I don't care if you go with a G3 or an FAL or an M1A or something like that, they're all basically the same. They have different operating systems and whatnot, but they all do basically the same thing. They send 308 downrange, that direction, as fast as you can pull the trigger. And if something is right on top of you, I don't care how big that thing is. If it has 5 rounds of 180 grain soft point going into its skull, it's probably going to stop doing whatever the heck it's doing. And even if it doesn't, guess what? The beauty about these styles of rifles, you can reload them. They got the external magazines. They are nice and quick, simple, easy to reload. If you are not in a hunting situation that limits you to 5 rounds, you've got your full 20-round magazine, so feel free to use that as needed. This right here is probably the best option on this list, with one caveat, which we're probably going to get into here in a minute. I actually have kind of I wouldn't necessarily call it an oddball, but kind of a curveball. That's the word I'm looking for. Kind of a curveball to toss you guys whenever it comes to animal defense. Many times, whenever somebody has to defend themselves against an animal, they're going to find themselves having to use a handgun as opposed to a rifle. Maybe they're not out hunting. Maybe they're out doing something that doesn't require them to carry around a rifle. So with that being the case, you start looking at your handguns, and personally, I think that a 357 Magnum of some kind is probably going to be your best option for handling a dangerous animal that might be coming at you. There are larger handguns out there. There are, in some situations, arguably better handguns out there. However, for the average person, I would say that your 357 Magnum is a really good option, simply because the 357 Magnum has quite significant power behind it, but not an overwhelming amount of power behind it. If you give someone, say, a 44 Magnum and you try to teach them how to shoot it, they're going to develop a flinch. They're going to end up missing 5 of those 6 shots. Maybe they'll land that first one, maybe they won't. I mean, I guess it depends on how well trained they are, but after that, if they don't have a significant amount of time on that gun, and it has to be significant because I myself flinch with a 44 Magnum revolver, it's just a lot of gun. Not only that, but 44 Magnum revolvers tend to be quite large, and if they're not quite large, they recoil even more. With a 357 Magnum, you get a significant amount of power going downrange, all at the same time having a relatively compact revolver that really does not kick all that much. Not only that, but here on the North American continent, which is where I currently am, the likelihood of you coming across something that a 357 Magnum cannot take down is quite small. Now, that being said, I do want to give a shout out to the 10mm, which would also be an extraordinarily good option. However, I do not own a 10mm, and so as a result, it is not on the list, but I'm sure somebody is going to bring that up in the comments down below. So, 357 Magnum probably going to be your best option if we take into consideration all the other options that are out there. This will probably put down that threat without having someone become so incapable and incompetent in using a revolver or any other handgun simply because there's too much recoil. Okay, up next on the list, 22 long rifle. Everyone loves talking about 22 long rifle, proper shot placement, blah blah blah. Do not use this for stopping a threat. If you have a cougar running at you, if you have a bear running at you, if you have a 600-pound boar running at you, do not rely on your 22 long rifle to put down that threat. Shut up and go grab your 12-gauge shotgun. This will absolutely stop that threat. I don't care what it is that is coming at you. If you have a pump-action 12-gauge shotgun with 5 or 6 rounds of, say, buckshot or slugs, then it's probably going to put down that threat. If we have a look at what a slug actually is, this is what a slug is. If you look in there, you see that red projectile. That is a 1-ounce piece of lead that is going to be traveling downrange at, in this particular case, 1,300 feet per second, which is a big piece of lead going downrange extraordinarily fast. You shove 5 of these into a grizzly bear, and it's probably going to stop doing whatever it's doing. Buckshot, also extraordinarily devastating at close range, and if something is an animal, they typically have to be right on top of you in order to do damage, so it's going to be close range. So this is probably one of the best options for stopping a large game threat, medium game threat from coming at you and doing bodily harm. Pump action shotgun of some kind. I would not recommend going with the semi-auto unless you are wholeheartedly competent, or confident, that's the word I'm looking for, wholeheartedly confident that your particular self-loading shotgun will be able to handle and stop that threat. Pump action shotgun, basically all of your pump action shotguns, unless we're talking about real garbage shotguns, will be able to reliably run. Alright, and last but not least, this one's going to be kind of a curveball, I guess. Let me get up here, and, alright, hold on, I do want to give an honorable mention. The M1 Garand, however it is you feel like pronouncing it, is of course the correct way to pronounce it, and everyone else is wrong. 8 rounds of 30-06. These are designed for full metal jackets, however, I have fired soft points through this particular one pretty gosh darn regularly. This one does have an adjustable gas system in it, so I can fire commercial ammunition through it without much issue. All that being said, you are looking at 150 to 174 grain bullets. You don't really want to fire anything heavier than that through your 30-06 M1 Garand. However, that being said, you're still looking at a 150 grain bullet moving with commercial ammo and an updated gas system at about 3,000 feet per second. And that is a lot of power going downrange, and most likely that is going to stop whatever threat it is that is coming at you, especially if we take into consideration that you have 8 rounds of that 30-06, which is a lot of power going downrange. So the main reason why this right here is an honorable mention and not in its own category is because I already had battle rifles included. I included that with the 308 Set-Me rifle that I had shown earlier, but this would be, once again, a very good option. Alright, and in at number 5, I'm going to go ahead and go out on a limb here. I'm going to tell you guys that a bolt-action military surplus rifle, specifically a military surplus rifle, a full-powered military surplus rifle, is going to be a good option to be able to stop whatever threat it is that is coming at you, simply because if we compare these to a modern hunting rifle, normally people only have 1 magazine with their modern hunting rifle, and to reload a magazine under stress while you're being attacked by something is simply not a viable option. That being said, if you have 5 rounds on a stripper clip, opening this bad boy up and shoving those rounds into the receiver of the rifle, well, long story short, these military surplus rifles are designed to be loaded under stress. So if you have the opportunity to be able to reload your 5-shot bolt-action rifle, I would much rather load it with a stripper clip through the top of the rifle versus having to pull a magazine out of a modern hunting gun. Not only that, but most of your modern hunting guns do not have iron sights. This particular one is missing iron sights, so I guess that is a hypocritical point with me showing off this particular one. I can pick a different military surplus bolt-action rifle if you guys would like. I got a whole wall of them right here. But bottom line, iron sights in a close-up encounter, unless you have something like a red dot, which most people do not have on their full-powered rifles, then iron sights in a close-up encounter would definitely be the better way to go, just to ensure that you do not miss your target, which is currently barreling down at you with a whole lot of hate. In the event that your, in this particular case, 5 rounds of 8mm Mauser do not stop that threat, then you can go ahead and reload it with a stripper clip, and 8mm Mauser is a rimless cartridge. They're quite easy to load with stripper clips, assuming that you have a good stripper clip and not something that is 100 years old and worn out. So this right here, not necessarily this right here, I mean throw in a Lee Enfield of some variety, throw in a Mosin Nagant of some variety, throw in a 98 pattern of Mauser of some variety, like dealer's choice. Your choice of full power bolt action rifle that's a military surplus gun that you can load with a stripper clip, so you're not having to focus on pulling out your magazine and loading that magazine while you're currently being eaten by a bear, which would just be not that good of a situation. However, if you are currently being eaten by a bear, the odds of you loading a stripper clip into a rifle, not very great, but significantly better than having to pull out an external magazine and load that thing. So those are my my top 5 guns for animal defense. We got the handgun. I think the 357 is definitely the best option in terms of animal defense. A 45 ACP 1911 would also be an extraordinarily good option. 10mm would also be an extraordinarily good option, but I think the 357 Magnum, with its slight more power and actually being inside of my arsenal, is going to be your best option, unless we start looking at some real hefty handguns like 44s and maybe some 45 long Colts and things like that. Besides that, we got your intermediate rifle, we got your full power rifle, we got your bolt action rifles, we got your shotguns. I think that I pretty much covered every firearm that I wanted to cover for this particular video. All that being said, thank you for watching. Appreciate your time. Like, subscribe, share. Description below has a link to all sorts of stuff. Go check it out. You guys go off, have yourself a fantastic day, and I will see you on the next episode.
Been a little while since I've done this. Bonnie and Clyde be damned. The poor man's Garand. It's a shame that bolt action shotguns aren't more mainstream.